So the slander continues as some executives or scouts or whatever they may be living in an alternate universe continue to trash New York Jets superstar cornerback Sauce Gardner, who is the best corner in the NFL. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. 2 shows tonight. Actually, be sure to tune in 8 o'clock. Same place, same channel, the Jet Nation YouTube. It'll go out on Twitter and all that too. Dylan Terman, Chris Schubert are going to be breaking down the full Jets rookie class with rookie camp getting ready to open up. And they're going to be talking about some of the expectations they have of the rookies moving forward. So again, tonight, 8 o'clock, Jet Nation Live, Chris Schubert, Dylan Terman. Be sure to check it out. I can't join in, but I did want to hop on and talk about this a little bit because it is just, it continues to be so absurd. And again, I would love to know what these people are on, or one person in particular. So the top 10 rankings came out. We talked the other day about how the Jets have several players appearing on these polls that ESPN is doing, where they're talking to executives, coaches, whatever it may be. And they've got Quinnen Williams ranked the number 2 DT in the NFL. They've got Breece Hall as the number 2 running back in the NFL. They've got Garrett Wilson as an honorable mention, top 10. A few others. Sauce Gardner today, number 3 corner, which is pretty good, right? That's not it's not exactly a bad rating, but if we're being honest, he's number 1. But apparently, folks are divided on this, and one person ESPN spoke to put his beer down long enough to say that he thinks Sauce Gardner holds on every single play. It's an important lesson because, and I say all the time. And let me make this clear because I don't want to sound like I'm being cocky here. I say it. I probably haven't said it in quite a while, but I try to make a point every now and then to remind people I'm a football fan. I do not, nor have I ever. I don't pretend to know more than an NFL coach, an NFL scout, and I don't do that. I watch the game. I've been watching the game for a million years. I watch a ton of film. I learn the game as best I can. Talk about the game as much as I can. But I know I don't have all the answers. But sometimes people defer to insiders or executives as like, oh, well, this guy said a thing and he works for this, so he must know what he's doing. Do we not? I mean, all you have to do as Jets fans is look at previous general managers and understand that being an executive doesn't mean you know what the hell you're looking at. But one executive in particular apparently said that Sauce Gardner is the most overrated player in the league and gets away with holding on every play. This is so beyond insanity. And so, again, you can't be living in reality and have this thought. You're talking about an NFL team that just went, a year and a half, 2 years, without their quarterback drawing a single roughing the passer play or call, despite several plays where he got hit late, he got hit in the head. Many hits where Zach Wilson could have drawn a call. Legitimate calls. We see enough calls where guys don't get hit, where guys almost take a shot to the head and they get a call. The Jets quarterback, all the beatings he took, not a single call for a year and a half. This is the way the refs deal with the Jets. But we're supposed to believe that for some unknown reason, for God knows why, they just let Sauce Gardner go out there and drag guys around the field when the ball is snapped. It's absolutely. You know how many times I've seen fans tweet out clips of Sauce Gardner that they think is a hold, but it's only a hold if you don't know the rules? The rules are very clear when it comes to pass interference. And what they say is that you have to significantly impede or impact the receiver's route. I see people sending out clips of Sauce Gardner where he's in the receiver's hip pocket and he checks him, put a hand on the shoulder, a tap, but keeps running alongside him. Does nothing to knock him off his route, pull him off his route, impede his route, divert his direction. Nothing. The receiver there is nothing that happens to the receiver that you can say, oh, that was forced by Sauce's contact. That should be PI, because that should be PI. And I'm not sitting here saying he has never interfered with anyone. I'm not saying there's never been a ticky-tack call that maybe went his way. You know who else that happens to? Every other top NFL cornerback. I mean, you can be a maniac and pretend that Sauce Gardner is the only guy who had a questionable call that went his way. That happens to every great corner. And he is a great corner, two-time All-Pro, two-time Pro Bowler in 2 seasons. That's why he's the best corner in the NFL. But I'm supposed to believe that someone who does an interview with ESPN believes that Sauce Gardner, a New York Jets corner, is the league has just decided collectively that we're going to let this guy hold on every single play because of his name. Oh, because he plays in New York. Yeah, Zach Wilson played in New York too. Guy took an absolute beating. First-round draft pick quarterback. So the NFL decided they would let the Jets quarterback get killed on a regular basis and do nothing about it. Not a single flag thrown. But Sauce Gardner, for some reason, is holding on every single play. So, like I said, the lesson here, especially for younger fans who might think that, oh, I read a thing where an executive said something, so it must be so. Not the case. There are people who work in the league, who, whether it's maybe they're related to somebody, maybe they know someone, maybe they went to college with a guy who helps them out and throws them a job, and then they get all of their information from Twitter. And I could see where somebody would think that if you're only on Twitter, and especially if you're an opposing fan, right? And I said very early on, I said during Sauce's rookie year that you knew how good he was right away. And you knew that other fan bases saw right away how good he was going to be, because teams' Twitters would go nuts if he gave up a catch, that like a reception. In 2024 in the NFL, where every single rule is designed to get receivers open to produce yards and points, everything the league does tries to bend it in the favor of the receivers. I remember against Buffalo when he gave up that big catch to Diggs down the right sideline. And it was like, oh, he's a bust. He's overrated. Look at this. And I'm watching. I'm going, he gave up a catch to one of the best receivers. And by the way, go back and watch that game. Nothing after that. Nothing. Diggs had one big, might have been the first drive right away. And I listened to an interview with Sauce after that. And you got to credit Diggs for this. The way that play unfolded, and it's a while back now, it's a couple years, I forget what route it was, corner, whatever route it was. Sauce, student of the game, and he said, I watched so much film on that dude, and he never ran that route one time. So, Sauce goes into that game knowing, all right, I've watched however many 100 reps this guy has run. I know what routes he runs when he does this, when he breaks this way, when he cheats that way. I know what this guy likes to do. And he ran one route early on that Sauce had never seen him run. And Sauce said, okay, well, that's something to keep in mind now. He does have that in his repertoire, or he is willing to run that route. Nothing after that. Gave up nothing. So you're talking about a guy who's given up what? I believe one career. No, it's one or none. Touchdown receptions in man coverage. He's given up some in zone. I know he gave up one to the Cowboys last year. I can't remember if that was man or zone. But the guy you put him in man, he doesn't get beat. You put him in zone, he's still fantastic. 6'3", ridiculous length, ridiculous speed. Obviously, as I said, student of the game, high character. He's a guy, he's going to get so paid. He's going to be the highest paid corner when he's a free agent, and he deserves to be. But clearly, this is a case of fan bases, whether it's just fans, executives. They look at the kid and they get aggravated because nobody should be that good that quick. It doesn't happen. When he made first team All-Pro as a rookie, what was he? I believe he was the first one in 42, 43 years to do that in the NFL. It just doesn't happen. The guy is doing things that are unheard of. And there's a certain segment of players, and I've believed this from early on. I think he got so good so quick that it bothered a lot of these corners probably feel like, hey, you got to pay your dues before you can be an All-Pro. You don't get to be an All-Pro as a rookie. Well, yeah, you do, if you're good enough. And you know what? You can do it your first 2 years as well. So you have guys coming after Sauce or knocking Sauce, and in terms of individual achievements, in 2 years, he's surpassed what some of these guys have done in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. or equaled what these guys did in an entire career. And it took them 2 years to do it. So Sauce Gardner, to me, phenomenal player. Lot of jealousy, a lot of envy out there from opposing fans, opposing players, obviously opposing executives. Again, two-time All-Pro, and I see guys leaving him off their top 10 lists. Like Sauce Gardner is the 18th best corner. And I know there's a lot of fans out there that's how they cope. I mean, you don't want to. Sometimes it's hard to say that, especially a division rival has a guy this young, this good, this quick. And it's like, well, I just have to find a way to dismiss it. So I'll just make some stuff up. Oh, look, here he is almost interfering with somebody. So I'll just say he does that on every play. Which, again, all you got to do is watch some of the games. But, I know it's easy to go on Twitter and just repeat what some other idiot said. But all you got to do is watch the football games. Sauce Gardner, absolute stud, and appears to be, and I say this all the time, it's like I can't talk about Sauce without mentioning what a good kid he is. He's just, his level of maturity and humility. I've talked about this before, right? The truest thing I may have ever heard Robert Saleh say was early on about Sauce, and said Sauce is an old soul. And, at first I heard that and I was like, I hadn't seen enough of Sauce, the person, up to that point. So I didn't really know if it was just lip service from his coach or what. But then you look at the documentary he did at that young age, putting something like that together, telling a story, going back home, try to encourage young kids. It's like this guy's not going out and getting into a lot of the trouble that you see young players do. He's doing the complete opposite. Not only is he keeping his nose clean, he's trying to encourage other young kids that come from where he came from, and telling them to keep their noses clean and keep grinding and put in the work and all. Just positive role model, positive influence. So to me, Sauce Gardner, you can't say enough good about the player. You can't say enough good about the person. And, at the same time, though, I kind of like this because I hope it lights a fire under him even more so. Like, it's not like the guy's not putting in the work, because you don't do the thing Sauce Gardner is doing if you're not putting in the work. So let this motivate him even more. Let it eat away at him. I hope he loses sleep over it. Not too much. Just hope it keeps him up at night a little bit and keep him thinking, all right, how do I prove him wrong? I mean, and they're already wrong. But hopefully this leads, if there's one thing we can say about Sauce, he's got to get more picks. And I'm sure he knows that. And maybe this is one more thing to get him fired up, to get him moving in that direction, because he absolutely deserves all the credit he gets. He deserves the accolades, the all-pro nods. Those are really the things that matter. And like I said, still, even with some executives refusing to put him in their top 10, still the number 3. So take out the delusional executives, and you're probably putting Sauce where he belongs, which is number 1. So on the one hand, it's like, congrats to Sauce, good job being named number 3, but really, he's number 1. So it's a bittersweet thing. But I think Sauce, he sent out a little tweet, kind of saying, what do you want from me? He sent out a GIF of like, all right, fine, and I hope it motivates him. And again, not that he's a guy that needs it, but a little more motivation never hurt anybody. And let this be another thing that lights a fire and gets him moving. And speaking of things moving, the Jets finally got moving with rookie wide receiver Malachi Corley, who they got signed today. I know a few people were worried about it. I don't tend to worry about contracts until if camp hits, if the team's practicing and the guy isn't there, that's when it's time to worry. So Corley gets signed to his deal. No surprise there. However, no Hassan Reddick. And here's the concern with Hassan Reddick. And I looked the other day. I couldn't find anything definitive. I couldn't find any solid data on it. But if Hassan Reddick ends up missing part or all of camp over his contract situation, what I've seen way too many times is guys skip the voluntary stuff, skip the mandatory stuff, skip or show up late to camp, and then they push too hard when they show up and they get hurt and they miss time. And as a Jets fan, the last thing they need to have happen is an elite pass rusher who they went out and traded for. Last thing they need is for that guy to miss time voluntarily, which has already happened, and then miss time non-voluntarily through an injury because he's not in football shape. As they say, we hear it all the time. Oh, he's staying in shape. This guy's staying in shape. There's in shape and there's football shape, in football shape. And if you're not out there practicing and you're not out there hitting and doing what your teammates are doing, you're not in football shape. So if you show up a couple weeks after practice started, maybe there's already been some padded sessions and guys have ratcheted up the intensity a little bit over the time period that you've missed. And then you show up and you're trying to compete with guys who are going a little harder, used to hitting a little bit more. And that's how guys get it. I've seen it enough times. I can't sit here and name off the names, but I know as a fan, and not just the Jets, I'm talking about guys who just, for whatever reason, don't practice, can't practice, show up late or show up very late, and then all of a sudden they're trying to show that they can hang with everybody, but they haven't had the same ramp up to get to that point. They push too hard too early on and they get hurt. The Jets don't need that with Hassan Reddick. I saw somebody today say they could trade him. I mean, that would just be insane. If the guy never steps on the field. Let's see. Charles Harrison says Sauce is the best corner in football. He can cover anyone. First in 40 years to be first team All-Pro, defensive rookie of the year. Exactly, Greg. That was the part of it that I mentioned. Now, another thing that could help Sauce Gardner, and this has nothing to do with Sauce Gardner, this is his coaching staff, and we talked about this the other day on our show on Jet Nation Live, again tonight, 8 o'clock, Chris and Dylan, check it out. Let him travel. Let Sauce Gardner move around and cover teams' best receivers. That it was so frustrating. We've seen it a few times now with the Jets since Sauce has come on board. And listen, this isn't a knock on DJ Reed. This is just saying, be smart. We saw it all the time with Revis and Rex, and it worked. You have an elite shutdown corner. Have him travel with the other team's best receiver. The Jets don't do that with Sauce. And we saw CeeDee Lamb absolutely smoke them last year. Couldn't get open against Sauce with one catch for 4 yards, I think, something like that. But the Jets just let him line up all over the field, didn't have Sauce follow him, and he smoked him. He, went for 1 million yards, and Dallas ran over the Jets. And there have been a few games like that. So the Jets need to let Sauce travel, and Sauce needs to get some more picks. And that'll kind of get him into that conversation. So I didn't mean to divert back to Sauce, but the team approach and the way they're using him is something that popped into my head. But speaking of things popping into people's heads, I think Boomer Esiason had some dreams pop into his head that he thought were reality, and he decided to come out publicly and say that Raiders wide receiver Davante Adams is expected to be traded to the Jets during the season. I don't see that happening. I don't financially. We just talked about Hassan Reddick. And to anyone who says the salary cap isn't real, then explain to me why the Jets gave up John Franklin Myers for pennies to move him on, to shed that salary, to shed that cap space. The Jets said we wanted to rework his deal. He wouldn't rework it to the number we needed. It was purely 1 billion% a cap space move. Like, we do not have the cap space to pay him and Hassan Reddick. JFM's got to go. We've seen it with others, right? Amari Cooper a couple years ago with Dallas. He is not a Cowboy because at some point you get, and we say it all the time, the cap is malleable. You can adjust it. There's loopholes. There's ways around things. You can pull, some tricks here and some things there. But at some point you get to where, okay, we've spent enough against the cap that we can't make any more huge purchases. The Jets right now have $5 or $6 million in cap space. Even if Aaron Rodgers agreed to a huge a huge pay cut, another huge pay cut to bring his buddy Davante Adams in, I mean, that would be he would have to take such a cut after the one he's already taken. And maybe he does that for that very reason. Maybe he says, I will take this much of a cap hit to bring this, or a pay cut to bring this guy in. Maybe. That's the only way it happens, and I don't see that happening. So you've got $5 or $6 million under the cap. Aaron Rodgers' number next year, I believe, is 60-some million for his cap hit. I could be. I'd have to look at that. I haven't looked at that in a couple weeks. But Rodgers has a huge hit. But Rodgers aside, if you're bringing in Davante Adams, you're not bringing him in for 1 year. You're bringing him in for multiple years. And how many times do we have to say it? Sauce, Garrett, JJ, Brees, all potential new deals within the next couple of years when Davante Adams would still be on board. And if Hassan Reddick, I mean, he's holding out. I'm assuming he's not holding out for a 1-year deal. And he's not holding out for small money. So if you find a way to retain him, you're going to do that by giving him a multi-year deal worth lots of money. So how many guys do you think a team can have who are making 25, 30 million a year? I mean, hell, Sauce might get 40 when all at the rate he's going. If he wins another first team All-Pro, let Sauce go out and get a few picks and win himself a Defensive Player of the Year. You think you're getting him for less than 35, 40 million? And then Garrett Wilson, who we're all expecting to be a 1,500-yard guy with Aaron Rodgers. Well, I shouldn't say all, but I am. I'm thinking 1,300 worst case scenario, and 14, 15 wouldn't surprise me. So Garrett Wilson, Sauce, Brees with an offensive line and some running room this year because he's not going to have a quarterback that they can load 8, 9, 10 guys in the box. Brees is going to blow up if JJ takes another step, and you've signed Reddick and you've still got Rodgers. You think there's room for Davante Adams and all that? Guys, the cap isn't infinite. It's malleable. Malleable and infinite are two different things. And we know from moves that teams have made historically, it is not unlimited. You can't just spend to your heart's content and never have to move anybody. Charles says they should pay Hassan Reddick. Absolutely. And also, we don't need Davante Adams. Too much going on. This is from Christian. And Christian, that's another part of it. I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the rumor. And of course, that's that party that goes, man, that would be nice. Whether you think it's possible or not, you think, yeah, that'd be really nice. But then at least for me, I stop and think, if Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, even if he's 75% of what Aaron Rodgers once was, there's enough on this team, talent-wise, that you don't need a Davante Adams. Or you certainly don't need him at the price that he would command. You just don't. I mean, there's so many reasons why the move wouldn't make sense. And that being one of them. I think that Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Brees Hall, Tyler Conklin, if, Brownlee and Gibson, if they come, they'll be depth guys. I'm not saying that you don't get Adams because you have Brownlee. But I like Brownlee. If Lazard returns to form of a couple years ago with Rodgers and becomes a guy who can, put up 800, 900 yards, which he won't have the reps to do that this year, but I just mean play at that level, you shouldn't need a Davante Adams. That's sort of just spending and giving up assets for the sake of it. And what's it going to cost? I mean, I don't think you're looking at a 1 at this point because of Adams' age. And let's not forget, the Raiders hired the coach that he asked for. Right? You're going to have a superstar player who's unhappy with the previous coach because he's a clown, and you start the coaching process and he's like, hey, man, this is the guy that I want. I want Pierce to come back. All right, you want him, you got him. We're bringing your guy back. And then week 3 or 4, you're going to trade him? Or 5, whatever Boomer's prediction was. And then Boomer doubled down on it. So he's not being shy about his prediction. I just don't see it happen. I don't see a world in which the New York Jets can afford Aaron Rodgers, Davante Adams, Hassan Reddick, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Jermaine Johnson. That's your cap right there. It's not realistic. Oh, and Michael Carter, by the way. Michael Carter sometimes flies under the radar for me because I'm thinking of all the guys that are going to make 20, 25, 30 million. He's not going to be in that range, but he will be one of the, if not the highest paid nickels in the NFL. So he won't come cheap. And, again, he won't be a $20 million a year guy. He won't be a $25 million a year guy. But 13, somewhere in that range, 12 to 14 million, somewhere in there. That's a lot. And I know you can move money around and you can give guys bigger guarantees this year than that year. But for These guys are going to want bonuses, right? And guaranteed money that breaks down over the course of the contract, and they get that money up front, but it counts, even hypothetically, if it was 10 million per year per guy in bonus money, it's 50, 60 million in bonuses. I don't see it happening. I don't see Adams happening. I don't see Aaron Rodgers, who took a $30 million pay cut last year, whatever it was. I don't see him taking another $15 or $20 million cut this year. I think that would be kind of, again, it would absolutely be unprecedented. The pay cut Aaron Rodgers took already is unprecedented. The selfish Aaron Rodgers, who's not invested and doesn't care, and does he really want to play anymore? Got to take a $30 million pay cut. And by the way, I can't remember if we mentioned this or not, because the media sure didn't. This is a couple weeks ago now, but I can't remember if we mentioned it on the show. Aaron Rodgers donated $100,000 to some wildfires in the area he's from in California to help battle some wildfires. $100,000. You didn't hear about that. That wasn't all over the paper. That wasn't all over that. That didn't pop up on your whatever home screen you use when you logged in, the same way Nick Bawden being off the roster for 10 minutes was the number one story in America for a few days, right? Rodgers, we've talked about this. He can do no right. He gives money to charity. Not a word. Not a word. He misses a day and a half of practice, and you got every mope on ESPN and every whatever dumb network talking about what a terrible human being he is, and he doesn't care about football anymore. One more again from Charles here before we sign this one off. The Jets to trade. Now, I still say the Jets trade DJ Reed. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know if Charles is saying this is something he wants to happen or he thinks will happen, or both. Jets have one of the best defenses in football. He likes Stiggers. Still say the Jets trade for Cortland Sutton. Jets should extend Quincy Williams. Quincy will be interesting because he got a short deal last year and then absolutely blew up. So I wondered, before knowing what they were going to spend on what this offseason, I wondered if they might try to get him extended this year, or if he might ask for an extension. As far as DJ Reed, Stiggers, I disagree with you, Charles, only because Stiggers' story is so unbelievable. To go from a fan-controlled league to the CFL in a year and win Defensive Rookie of the Year or Outstanding Defensive Player, whatever they call it. It's amazing, but we have no idea what he's going to be. He might be a great corner, and maybe he will, but you can't bank on him as a rookie with 1 year of pro football under his belt to step into the NFL and be a CB2 on a team that's hoping to win the Super Bowl. I just don't know I think DJ Reed, I think, I said a couple of years ago, and Dylan and I have talked about this. I kind of said, maybe you trade him and you draft Joey Porter, in the first round. And when I thought, back then, DJ Reed still had a couple years left on his deal. So I thought performance plus discounted salary, which he plays at a pretty low number for his performance, and the fact he had multiple years left on his deal, I thought you might be able to get a 3 for DJ Reed and then use your first on Joey Porter, and you team Joey Porter and Sauce Gardner for years to come, which would be fantastic. But trading DJ Reed at this point without an established, and I've talked about this, and someone got really upset with me on Twitter for saying it, but really, do the Jets have the best trio of corners in the NFL? Absolutely. Sauce, Reed, and Carter. There's not a better trio. But behind them, you've got Brandon Echols, who's solid enough, nice, more of a number 2 backup, and then just a bunch of guys who haven't played. So the starting 3 are awesome. Best trio the Jets have had maybe ever, at least in my time as a fan. I know, Reeves Cromartie was really good, but they never had a nickel at that same time who was on the level of Michael Carter. So this might be the best, but if, God forbid, one of those guys goes down, the depth behind them, again, Echols, solid enough. He's okay, but I would not get rid of DJ Reed at this point without a viable starting caliber corner on the roster. Again, I mentioned the Joey Porter thing. I thought, watching him at Penn State, I felt like he could come into the league and be a high-level starter right away. So that I would have been okay with. But Stiggers, there's not enough there to know if he can be a player from day one, and they're going to need a guy to be a player from day one. So that'll wrap this one up. Going to run now. Again, Sauce is the man. Executive is an idiot. But tune in tonight, just a few hours from now. I don't even know what time it is. About 3.5, 4 hours. Tune in again, Jet Nation Live. Chris Schubert, Dylan Terraman. They are going to be going over all of their expectations for the rookie class moving forward, with rookies reporting to camp tomorrow. Folks, football will be here before you know it. And I'm excited. You should be too. Have a good one, Jets fans.